All right, so I wanted to talk about cast on crit and how specifically that works with Bonestorm. Someone made a comment on one of the videos saying that he was skeptical about the number of times that it's triggering cast on crit for Bonestorm. I made the claim that it triggers once on the projectile hit and once on the explosion that happens after the projectile hits the unit. So I got curious and did some testing, and here are some of the findings. So kind of this first section that I want to go through, we'll just talk about cast on crit in general, and then we'll talk about what it means for Bonestorm. So the energy you generate from your crits scales with damage dealt and the rarity of the monster. So here we have 1, 2, 5, 20. This corresponds to the rarity of the monster and how much your energy is multiplied by when you crit them. So normal monsters give 1 energy base per crit. Then we have 2 for magic monsters, 5 for rares, 20 for uniques, which is why you notice so many more cast on crit procs on unique monsters. But it also scales with the damage you deal. So if you deal more damage with your cast on crit proccing ability, the one that's triggering the cast on crit, you're going to get more energy for it based on how much damage you deal. So this is probably the not well understood, and we don't know the exact values of what this needs to be on each boss. So each boss has different ailment thresholds based on, and it's usually some fraction of their life, like 80% of their life or something like that. Probably lower than that, but basically the idea is this line in the cast on crit gem makes it so that you can't just do crits to trigger cast on crits. You actually have to do damage to get cards. So our damage went down significantly, and based on the ailment threshold that we deal to his health, it should have reduced the amount of energy we generate. So let's see. Did not crit. Okay, so that crit only gave us like 30%. And that was for a double hit. So that confirms that damage is important for whatever spell is triggering your critical hits. So that's kind of how energy generation works there. Multi-hit skills roll cast on crit effects per hit. So this, I'll show some clips of proof of this, specifically for Bonestorm. But effectively, this means that anything that has multiple hits can trigger cast on crit multiple times. Now, I've not tested anything besides Bonestorm, so it could be an anomaly of Bonestorm, but I'll leave this here just in case. Energy cannot overflow for a single hit, unlike invoke skills. So this means that if your hit generates more energy than your cast on crit takes to trigger, it will not trigger multiple times. It'll just trigger once and set your energy to 0. So this is distinctly different from invoke skills, which specifically allow you to trigger multiple times if your energy threshold goes above the requirement. Gems and sidecast on crit do not count as invoked, but it does count as triggered. So this one is important for the one passive on the tree that says that let's show it over here, this one here. So recover 3% mana when you invoke a spell. Triggered spells deal 45% increased damage. So you get the triggered spell benefit, but you don't get the invoked benefit. So something to keep in mind. And multiple skills in Cast on Crit increases the required energy before Cast on Crit triggers, and they trigger at the same rate. So what this means is if you have Arc and Comet and you're Cast on Crit, it'll wait until both energy requirements for the two of them together is satisfied before it triggers both of them at the same time. So if you are kind of expecting Arc to trigger more often than Comet because it has, a lower cast speed, that's not how it works. When it comes to Bonestorm specifically, a single channel of Bonestorm can trigger Cast on Crit up to 40 times, since both the projectile and the subsequent explosion can apply Cast on Crit. Insert clip here. All right, so here we have a clip fighting some map boss. And the setup here is we have life tap on our Bonestorm, so it costs 0 mana. So all of the mana you're seeing being used there on the right is coming from our Cast on Crit. So with that change there, we can measure how many times Arc crit right there. And our Arc mana cost was 55. We were using a lower level Arc just to test it out. And our health got down to, looks like 1849 should have been the lowest. See if I can get a good pause in here. $49. Yeah, so it was 49 was the lowest. So the difference there, the amount of mana that we spent was 1668 divided by our mana cost, which is 55, would give us the number of arcs, which comes out to 30.33. And if we factor in the fact that there was some amount of mana regen going on during that cast, that means we probably got off at least 1 or 2 other arcs. So it looks like we got about 32 arcs would be my guess. I'll play this again. So the math kind of checks out, right? We've got 16 Bonestorm stacks, as well as 32 approximately arcs based on how much mana we're missing. And then Bonestorm channeling adds projectiles out to the side, so some projectiles can miss on smaller targets and bosses. This means we rarely hit our full damage potential except against enormous targets. So enormous targets would be like the Titan in the Forge, and like the one guy that's like stuck in the middle of the platform. Everyone else is kind of just too tiny. They're not fat enough to eat up all the projectiles. So we end up losing some damage on those bosses if we do a full channel. So the way we can kind of optimize around this is to just not do a full channel. So we can channel kind of, 75% of the way through. Or just channel based on how large the boss looks to be. So there's not a great way to kind of get all of them to hit all at once on smaller targets that I've been able to find. So kind of just gotta work with what you got. So that lets you, that gives a little bit more value to skill gems that are like lower cast speed but higher damage throughput. So you probably don't want Arcane Surge. I would still keep in Scatter Shot because Scatter Shot is just too good. It's too much. It saves you a lot of mana when you use it. So I would still keep in Scattershot, but other cast speed focused supports I would stay away from for Bonestorm. But I think that's about it. Let me know if you like this type of a video. Um, I'm not sure many people are as nerdy as I am about this stuff. So if you do enjoy this type of stuff and want to see more of it, let me know.